HQ2. Who here already knows what I'm talking about? We got like one. If you're thinking of the bidding war for Amazon's second headquarters, you'd be right. When Amazon put out its request for proposals in late 2017, it was promising 50,000 jobs and $5 billion of investment in its new home. Economic developers from across the country began to drool. The proposals rolled in from newly formed small towns like Stonecrest, Georgia, to mid-tier cities like Kansas City, all the way up to superstar cities like New York, Atlanta, and DC. The largest applicants came offering billions of dollars in largely taxpayer-funded incentives, often without consulting the taxpayers themselves. Meanwhile, small towns did whatever they could to compete. Stonecrest actually offered to carve off or de-annex 345 acres of land to create a new town called Amazon, Georgia. Does anyone else see a problem here? When big cities and small towns alike are willing to change their identities and make offerings of land and tax dollars to one of the most valuable companies in the history of the world, something is seriously wrong. And our communities know it. Residents of Long Island City, New York, one of the eventual winners of the HQ2 bid, raised such vehement objection to the planned development that the company backed out of the deal. The remaining winner, Arlington, Virginia, has promised Amazon $750 million in tax rebates, $23 million in grants, $28 million in infrastructure improvements around the planned development site, and assistance in building a helipad. When our economic developers make these deals, they're too often operating from a mindset of scarcity. By offering to move mountains, sometimes literally, to win big development deals or create new industry clusters, we often make our local economies more vulnerable to a single point of failure. Small business is often displaced, as are lower income communities, and our homes become pass-throughs for wealth generation by large companies with no roots there. The Amazons of the world source globally, extract as much value as possible from our cities, pay little to no taxes, Amazon got a rebate this year, and then offshore or pocket the profits. So if you've ever wondered how wealth inequality and stratification has continued to worsen, even as our economy booms, you might start there. And here in Connecticut, inequality is far too familiar. Did you know that according to the New Urban Crisis Index, the Bridgeport, Stamford, Norwalk metropolitan area is home to the highest levels of inequality in the entire country? That's higher than New York, higher than San Francisco. We urgently need a new approach and a new perspective. And to get there, we'll need to start asking better questions. One of my favorite quotes to live by comes from David Cooper Ryder, the father of appreciative inquiry, who says that we all live in the world our questions create. We all live in the world our questions create. I love that because a beautiful question has a way of slowing us down and drawing our attention once more to long-held assumptions and things taken for granted. So much of the economic theory at the base of our current approach to development hasn't been seriously re-examined in decades. My own beautiful question, which is the basis for this talk and for my work, came to me a couple years ago, soon after I moved to New Haven. It goes like this. How might we build thriving local economies in which no material or human potential is wasted? That's a big question, right? Trust me, I know. To me, it feels like that one question holds a lifetime of work and wonder. I mean, thriving local economies in which no material or human potential is wasted. Can you imagine what that might look like? Luckily, we have 3.8 billion years of living proof that it's possible. Natural ecosystems. There, we find abundance instead of scarcity. Countless organisms, each with a specific purpose. Circular material and energy flows, and a deeply embedded resilience. So here's a question. What if we approach local economic and community development the way that nature builds and regenerates ecosystems? How might that look and function differently than our current model? Well, think about it. Abundance instead of scarcity means equitable wealth generation and the eradication of poverty. Each organism with a specific purpose means not just full employment, but full purposeful employment, through which each individual has the opportunity to offer their unique genius, their unique gift for the enrichment and betterment of all. Circular material flows means zero waste. No one has a trash can, and all products are created for reuse at the end of life. Circular energy flows means 100% renewable energy, sustainably harvested through seamless integration of the built environment using distributed networks. It also means that the energy our communities invest in creating business, art, advocacy, place, is returned to that community in full in some form. Finally, deeply embedded resilience means the ability to withstand system shocks, like natural disasters or economic recession, and to regenerate in their wake. That all sounds pretty great, right? I mean, who wouldn't want that for their local economy? What? Some of you are probably thinking, yeah, that sounds really great. It also sounds super realistic. Keep dreaming, tree hugger. All right, fair enough. So how do we get there? Well, let's look how nature does it. Natural ecosystems consist of an enormous diversity of species, each having co-evolved as part of a web of mutualistic relationships that ensure the flourishing of all. As Dana Baumeister of Biomimicry 3.8 observes, competition is actually quite rare in nature, in large part because it's incredibly inefficient. This dynamic equilibrium is sustained because each individual organism that's a part of that ecosystem exists in relationship to all others, meaning that as it benefits others. These robust networks make the ecosystem both resilient and regenerative. This interdependence also means that growth happens collectively and often in fractals. Oh, and it has limits. Imagine an ecosystem in which only one or two species was growing, and growing fast. Eventually, other species become scarce, or even cease to exist. Why? Because the resources required for that growth are finite. Left unchecked, the system would collapse. Sound familiar? Now for the really good news. This isn't a pipe dream. Pieces of this vision are being realized all around the world right now. In the Basque region of Spain, Mondragon exists as a powerful example of how networks of cooperatively owned businesses can be more resilient and equitable and even recession-proof than other forms of ownership. Meanwhile, long-standing examples of businesses sharing waste, energy, material, water flows exist from Kalundborg, Denmark to Chicago, Illinois. Phoenix, Arizona is building an innovation campus around its recycling facility and inviting companies and innovators with unique and viable ideas for reusing the waste it collects there to co-locate and reabsorb those streams. Global organizations like the Wellbeing Economy Alliance are beginning to connect and amplify the growing number of individuals and organizations around the world working on new models. And right here in New Haven, we're working to build what I call a circular business ecosystem, a local or bioregional network of businesses built using natural systems principles and embedded in the unique cultural and environmental context of its place. For example, we've begun to explore how we might build an urban mushroom farm using the readily available waste streams from local breweries and cafes. In these ecosystems, new connections between existing businesses form opportunities for collaborative, community-driven innovation that can form the basis for a more diversified, resilient, and equitable local economy. Along the way, we'll share what we learn in hopes of being inspired and inspiring others. These naturally inspired approaches offer citizens a better way to engage in building a future for their place. A future in which industry, society, and the environment can actually co-evolve together. That's going to take all of us. So, what can you do? Well, if you're really excited about this or are already working on it in some way, great. Take the next step. Get involved in the development process in your city or town. Ask the tough questions and bring your boldest ideas. Push for a more transparent and meaningful community voice in that process. Explore and come to know the ways in which your local economy already functions like a natural ecosystem. Then work to strengthen the weak spots and build new ties by drawing on the wisdom of nature and the talents of your fellow community members. On the other hand, if this is brand new to you and you're not sold yet, but this talk made you curious in any way, I'd encourage you to go deeper. You might start with John Fullerton's work on regenerative capitalism, Kate Rayworth on donut economics, Donella Meadows on limits to growth, or the vast resources of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation on circular economy. Everything I've spoken about today has roots in their ideas, and their ideas, in turn, have roots in the ideas of others. So follow your curiosity as far as it takes you. My friends, we are part of nature. This separateness manifests in our current approach to economic development, positions nature as something outside of ourselves, a resource to be tapped for endless growth. But we know it's so much more. I think we can all agree that we're facing some big challenges and systemic failure today. At best, we're conserving the environment. At worst, we're defiling and destroying it, and with it, our future and our children's futures. But if we can humble ourselves to become students of nature and take our place as one part of the greater whole, we can begin to build a future in which our local economies and the natural ecosystems they're part of can regenerate and thrive. In closing, I want to acknowledge and draw attention to my privilege. The privilege that has afforded me the opportunity to explore these concepts and share this idea with you today. The truth is, the practice of communion with nature is far from new. Indigenous communities around the world have lived in right relationship and balance with the natural world, the life that surrounds and supports them for generations. But their voices are not heard as loudly as they should be. So it's my hope that by my being here today, we might all come to share a little bit more in their knowing and more fully appreciate the gifts that they and the natural systems they care for and protect have to offer all of us. Thank you.